The Bible says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. The truth is not something. The truth is someone. That someone is Jesus Christ. And when you know him, you have the truth, and you walk in the truth, and you joy in the truth, and you rejoice with truth that is unspeakable and unshakable, because Christ is the solid rock.
Hello everybody, thank you for joining me once again as we explore this section of the channel of the last hours. And of course we're talking about the retrospective look on Jacob's Trouble. Now the thing is that I am doing videos on eschatology. However, at the moment this whole situation in the Middle East seems to be just changing almost with every minute, and there's news every minute. If you watch people like Eric Steckelbach, who I do, and he's a really, really good, really fantastic channel, and I would seriously suggest that people do follow him. Basically, you know, he says it's the most volatile moment, and practically hourly there's something new that's coming out of Israel and stuff. So I will be getting on to the eschatology sections, don't you worry, the videos will be coming up. But first of all, what I want to discuss today in this episode, as you would have seen, is called Irony and the Great Unwashed. Now, again, a bit of nomenclature work here. As you know, on this channel, we've already discussed it. You can check out The Elephant in the Room and other videos on this channel. But basically, the Palestinians don't exist. Okay, that's the first fallacy. Well, at the moment, the Palestinians don't exist. As we know, as we've already discussed from Emperor Hadrian, the renaming of the land of Israel, or the tribes, the land of the tribes of Israel, was called Syria Philistina, and then of course it's been anglicised into the word Palestine by the British army after they kicked out the Ottomans, and then basically Yasser Arafat, the terrorist from the Palestinian Liberation Organization, then came in and basically made up the Palestinian people to try and aid the terrorist objectives of the PLO. So, as I've said countless times, if you call them the Palestinians, I actually call them what they're properly called, and that's the Gazan Arabs, or the Gazans, or something like that. They live in one little area. It's not a state yet. Hopefully it won't be. It's not a country. It's nothing. It's basically a little sort of, well, actually it's not quite little. It's actually quite large, but it's a section which contains Gaza, which was there in biblical times. Well, I say biblical times, we are in biblical times now, but it was there for when the Canaanite tribes were there. So it's a very old city. It wasn't a massive city at the time, but you know, it's a very old city, and basically the Gazans live in Gaza. I also say rather oddly because the Gazans live in Judea and Samaria, which is known as the West Bank. Well, the West Bank is a wrong name for that area, because the West Bank, it was deemed the West Bank of Jordan. But the thing is that the West Bank isn't called the West Bank, it is actually Judea and Samaria. Those are the proper names for it. Gaza remains Gaza because it is, you know, the biblical name for it. Now, so you've got the Gazans who live in Gaza, and you've got the Gazans, or the Gazan Arabs, that live in the Judea and Samaria. Okay. Now we have we'll have a look at a list of some very disgusting, filthy individuals who are really rather. What's coming out of their mouths is really quite ironic, really, hence the reason we've got that. And then we're also going to talk about some people that I've actually come into, you know, quite strong words with, well, against me anyway, and that's the the left-wing movement. Now, the left-wing movement, actually more a left-wing retrograde. They're actually, you know, they're supposed to be a left-wing progressive movement, but they're actually a left-wing retrograde motion that's actually recessive, because they're going completely back on themselves. They have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. The vast majority of left-wing people don't know what they're talking about in the terms of Israel and what's happened. Now, they're just jumping on a fashionable bandwagon to wear one of those stupid bloody cloths around them and yell from river to the sea and so on and so forth. When half of them don't even know which river it is, and half of them don't even know which sea it is, and half of them don't even know the other half don't even know what intifada or even practically what jihad means. But it's just the way it is, unfortunately. So I once worked with a chap in a governmental department who was very, very sort of old school, what have you, and used to have protests around the area where I used to work, and used to call them the Great Unwashed. So that's exactly what they are. The left-wing movement, like filthy individuals like Greta Thunberg and so on and so forth, they are the Great Unwashed. They are the idiots that are producing nothing but trouble for a cause that they really don't know anything about. And if they were successful in their cause, they would be also at the tail end of terrorism. So the irony of the whole thing just makes you just sort of like want to chew your arm off and beat yourself around the head with it, because it is just absolutely ridiculous. So let's have a look at irony candidate number one. A particularly filthy individual who is committing what would be deemed as a genocide against the Ukrainian people. And of course, I am talking about Vladimir Putin. Now, old Vlad the lad, Putin has basically, he's got some undesirable connections to certain undesirable people and what else have you in Russia. But around approximately 2 years ago, he decided to invade Ukraine, as we know. He decided to bring up his armies to the border, and then lied to everybody, as he always does. He lied to them and basically said, "Oh well, absolutely everything's all fine. I'm only just doing some special sort of mission here, or some kind of army practice or whatever." And then as soon as the Olympics, the sporting event of peace was over, he then invaded Ukraine. Regardless of the views and what have you, the Ukrainian people are a sovereign country, and he's basically gone in, and since then he has been displacing, not even telling people to leave like the Israelis have. They've been sending out leaflets. There's proof of this as well. They've been sending out leaflets. They've been actually sending social media messages to the Gazans to get out of the area before they start bombing the areas that they know there are terrorist cells or underground tunnels. But what does Vladimir do? He basically goes along and says, right, I'm just actually going to attack this country, which he has done in gusto. He has attacked the Ukrainian people. He's bombed the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian people are dying in many large numbers. They are basically trying to escape. They are displacing. He's basically committing a genocide against the Ukrainian people. The army, at least his army looks like an army, and they're fighting another army, the Ukrainian army. But of course, what happened when the world sort of said, "Oh, Vladimir, don't do this," he then turns around, calls their bluff, and says, "Or else what? Why not do it?" And when people have actually tried to say, "All right, we're going to really start, forcing you to do what we want you to do because we don't want you attacking the Ukrainians," what has he done? He's held his finger over a button to launch nuclear missiles and said, "You try and stop me, you get nuclear war." So there we have Vladimir Putin. Now, the irony of the situation is the fact that old Vlad the lad, who is committing atrocities in the Ukraine and has been for the last 2 years, is basically, he from the outset, he's been calling for restraint from Israel. He's been calling for and demanding humanitarian pauses in the war that Israel has against a terrorist organisation. Now, there is a very prophetic reason for this, and I thank God that I am a student of eschatology, because Ezekiel 38 and 39 are the prophetic chapters within the book of Ezekiel, and they detail the war of Gog and Magog. Now, the name's weird, I know, but it is a confederation of at least 3 countries that will war against Israel. They will journey to Israel, they'll try to attack it, however they won't win because the Almighty will get involved and stop them. But it is a prophetic battle that will happen in the end times, when the church and everyone else is raptured away and what else have you, and only the disbelievers and the Jews will remain through the Great Tribulation and so on and so forth. However, regardless of all that, that's on the other channel, and we'll discuss all those kinds of points there. The issue is that you need at least three, the main players in the War of Gog and Magog, 3 very, very strange bedfellows to join up. And these bedfellows are basically Russia, Turkey, and Iran. Now, Turkey has, until recently, been a long-time friend of Israel. Iran absolutely hates Israel, out and out. It's not the Iranian people, it would be the psychopathic mullahs and so on and so forth that are in charge of Iran. And of course, Russia has really, it's basically just only been vested in its own interests and what else have you, and it just does what it does. To have the Islamic Revolution of Iran side with the Orthodox Russian Christian, or sort of federation there, it doesn't seem to gel. It's just really odd, but it's happened. Vladimir Putin has basically moved the prophetic chess pieces into position. He has allowed and met with Hamas leaders, Iranian leaders, Turkish leaders, and so on and so forth. But the actual irony of those situations, as I said, is that he's basically calling for all this kind of stuff. Benjamin Netanyahu, you need to have a pause in your war against Hamas. You need to give Hamas a rest. You need to give the people a rest. Now, if you just take a quick look onto Google and just type in about sort of casualties of the Ukrainian-Russian war, you can then see a very interesting fact. Now, there are very different kinds of numbers being put here, but all of them are quite large. The United Nothing in Ukraine has determined that a death toll of civilians is at least 10,000 civilians have been killed due to the Russian war in Ukraine. This is including more than 560 children, and over 18,500 people have been injured due to the Russian occupation and war against Ukraine. Now, the irony is the fact that you've got this nutcase Putin basically demanding respite for the terrorists in Gaza, whilst he's basically hammering the living daylights out of the people of the Ukraine. The other kinds of numbers that we've got at the moment, according to Wikipedia, the total casualties are just approximately 70,000 people killed, with 100,000 to 120,000 wounded. That's a US estimate. As we carry on down, we get another from the US intelligence. Basically, we have another 70,000 deaths attributed to the Russian occupation. Now, it's so funny how, and we'll talk about these filthy individuals from the ANC, but basically Israel has had to go to court over from the International Court of Justice at The Hague, which always makes me laugh if it's named after Earl Haig, because he was one of the biggest butchers in the First World War ever. Basically, you've got the United Nations, you've got people voting about, Israel, you need to stop, Israel need to stop, Israel need to stop. Anytime that they've said, Vladimir, could you please stop, or else we have to start putting some financial sanctions. Well, that's done nothing, hasn't it? And you're not demanding that they stop. You're not making your votes that they stop. You are basically allowing him to carry on because he's threatening you with a nuclear holocaust if you carry on. This brings us to the next in our line of the trifecta of crap for Gog and Magog, and that would of course be Recep Erdogan, who is the Turkish president, and he has been very, very vocal. He has completely and utterly supported Hamas in what they've done. He has incited his own population into anti-Semitic actions, and also stating very, very dangerous anti-Semitic rhetoric as well. He has been present at rallies and protests, and he's riled people up big time. Now, this filthy individual, Erdogan, who should be a friend of Israel, but as we know from Gog and Magog, that friendship is now done and dusted. Basically, he's calling Benjamin Netanyahu, or he has called Benjamin Netanyahu in the past, a war criminal because of the war crimes that Israel are committing against the Gazan people and so on and so forth. Well, as we know, it's absolutely proved that the Israeli IDF forces are not committing war crimes against the Gazan people. They're actually trying to allow the Gazan people to leave areas, whilst in fact the Gazans are being shot, were being shot by Hamas at the time when they tried to escape, but we'll talk about that soon enough. And basically, you've got this idiot saying that you're doing this, and whilst the Israelis are trying to sort of allow people to move, they're now allowing people from the very south part in Rafah to move up because they have to clear out Rafah. Now the thing is, they're allowing the Gazans to move around. Yeah, they're going back to rubble. That's because the whole strip is a jihadi terrorist playground. The whole thing of it is a terrorist playground. It is the largest, terrorist installation in the world. Now, Erdogan pointing his finger, you're a filthy war criminal and so on and so forth. Well, let's take a look at his history, or recent history, shall we say. A quick search on how many Kurdish people have been murdered within Turkey will result in the Kurdish Turkish conflict, which has gone from 1978 to present. It's still carrying on. And basically it states that since, this is Wikipedia again, since the conflict began, more than 40,000 people have died. The vast majority are Kurdish civilians. Well, that's war crimes right there straight away. As we've already discussed about the war crimes in the Middle East under the international humanitarian law, you are not to go for members of the public because they are protected people. So I had seen a video. It was pretty horrible, really. There were two Kurdish women kneeling down just over it was not actually a cliff, but it was sort of it was quite a drop, but it goes down to about 2 or 3 meters and then goes to a plinth before a cliff. And they were on their knees, hands tied behind their back, and they were facing their murderers who were Turkish soldiers. One woman was then kicked over the side onto the plinth and then basically sprayed with bullets. And the other woman who was staring up at her murderer basically watched him strafe his machine gun up from navel to face. And then she basically obviously fell down dead. Or fell over dead, shall we say. So basically there are definite war crimes being committed by the Turkish army, who is under the control of Erdogan. So Erdogan, that makes you a filthy war criminal. Maybe you're just trying to deflect what you're doing to the Kurdish people. But then again, as we'll talk about the great unwashed left movement, where are your protests now? Where are your protests for Ukrainian people? We'll discuss about the Fulani Muslim militias murdering Christians fairly soon. And we'll ask the same question. The next on our list is a filthy individual who is a gutless coward by the name of Antonio Guterres. Antonio Guterres is the Antonio Guterres is the Secretary General of the United Nations, or should we call basically the United Nothing. Now, this filthy individual basically said that Israel and what happened to the Israelis on the 7th of October 2023, of course this day is the 2nd of February 2024, he basically said that it did not happen in a vacuum. Basically saying that the Israelis brought it on themselves. Now, as recent news has been coming out and people have been in shock, but again, not really too much in the way of protests or absolute outcry, which sickens me to my stomach, is the fact you've got the United Nations relief organisation in Gaza, UNRWA. Now, Guterres is one of the main people for UNRWA, or basically, he would know what they should be doing, you would think. It's just so funny how many and how much aid and money goes to UNRWA to try and assist. And it's just so funny how it's now been proved that UNRWA employees were involved in the 7th of October massacre against the Jewish people and the non-Jewish people in Israel. It's really quite disgusting. Now, Antonio Guterres, as I said, he's a filthy coward because he lacks the conviction of what he states to Israel, because the Israeli delegate to the United Nothing basically challenged the United Nothing to watch the 50 minutes of captured, it's a collection of captured footage taken from the terrorists themselves, and also CCTV footage in areas where the terrorists were, that had cameras. And basically Guterres refused to watch it because he doesn't want basically to see the Hamas terrorists raping women with such force that they break their pelvises. He doesn't want to see people being beheaded, or eyes being gouged out, or babies being cooked in ovens, or people being burnt alive. He didn't want to see that because he's a filthy, stinking coward. And that's as simple as easy as that. So Guterres and the United Nothing really should actually basically they should disband, they should just go really, because they're absolutely no use. The United Nothing they were relatively vocal to begin with, should we say, for the Russian-Ukrainian war, but they've since shut up for a long time ago. They have not said anything really to disrupt or to annoy the Chinese. They're frightened of the Chinese. They are not really trying to curb the Iranians with their uranium enriching and their weaponization of nuclear fuel. They are not doing anything about the Fulani Muslim militias murdering and capturing. They're murdering at the moment. Loads and loads of people, like hundreds of Christians within the areas of Africa, and also they've just recently, literally I think about 2 days ago, hijacked a Christian school bus and basically just took all the children. The United Nothing are not doing anything about Turkey, they're not doing anything about the threat toward Taiwan, they're not doing anything about North Korea. So the next in our list of irony is basically another politician, as it always is, and here we have the case of Penny Wong from Australia. Now, Penny Wong is in the Labour government of Australia. She is the Minister for Foreign Affairs, and she decided to take it upon herself to take a trip to Israel to discuss a roadmap to a two-state solution for peace. Now, if she, like all the other morons out there, would actually read the Hamas manifesto, You will never have a two-state solution. Not even from the days of Yasser Arafat and the PLO would you ever get a two-state solution. There were times when they were given around about 95% of the country from the Israelis, and yet they turned it down because the terrorists do not want Israelis there. They do not want Israel there. They want to basically end the Jews and Israel. That's it. No two-state solution. So you've got this idiot Penny Wong, who her country is in a bit of a state. Her government are unable to control rapid inflation. They are constantly putting interest up to try and control rapid inflation. They're not doing anything to assist people really in the terms of a little bit of inflation relief, interest relief. They keep on putting interest up all the time so that people are becoming homeless because they can't afford the houses that they bought several years ago. It's the mortgage payments are just becoming too high. Apart from that, there is a lot of trouble that's happening in Australia. Not that it's seen much, but the thing is that Penny Wong decided, I'm going to take a trip which has been called an abject failure to Israel to discuss Israel. Israel, you've got to have a two-state solution. Did Penny Wong go to see Hamas or the Hamas representatives or whatever? No, she didn't. She just went, as they all do, to go and see Benjamin Netanyahu and his ministers. They don't see anybody else. Why? Because they're scared. They're scared about going into the jaws of terrorism and to see the terrorists. That's fully it. I've just finished watching a video from what's his name, Senator James Patterson, who basically kept on trying to eke out of this woman a cause for condemnation against anti-Semitism and when it occurs in Australia. Now, there has been a huge amount of anti-Semitism that has been occurring throughout the whole of Australia due to, unfortunately, the prophetic times in which we live now. For when good is evil, good is called evil and evil is called good. You would have seen the quote at the beginning of the video. Now, she's basically trying to, I'm going to forge a way. My country isn't getting in a bit of a state as it is, but it's all good. I'm going to try and help this country get their affairs in order. Whilst there's anti-Semitism, quite rampant anti-Semitism throughout Australia. It's just a joke. The irony is just like, you can't get your own affairs in order, yet you're going to go and tell another country how to get theirs in order. It's just astounding. The next chinless wonder that we go and see in the irony list is basically David Cameron. And his very recent, in the last couple of days, actually yesterday in fact, or the day before, sorry, his last statements on imposing a Palestinian state on Israel. He's basically saying now that if Israel does have a ceasefire to try and release captives, again, war crime from Hamas, they're going, they're thinking about the possibility from the UK to actually then recognise a Palestinian state and then enforce some kind of preventative military measure from Israel to secure their own country. Now the thing is, as Eric Stuckerback would say, which is very true, people like Cameron and also the European Union are basically looking to impose. Biden is now jumping on, but he's the last one next of our list of idiots. And what is it to one country to impose another country to lose a bit of their own sovereign land? Because regardless of who lives in the Gaza Strip or within Judea and Samaria, it is still Israeli land. The whole country of Israel is Israeli land. We've already discussed that. I'm not going to go into it now. Look at the elephant in the room episode. But the thing is that you've got these individuals now saying, oh, well, we're actually going to make you accept the Palestinian state solution. The Israelis have been more than happy to accept that. It's been the Palestinians who have not. This is a moron of an ex-Prime Minister of the United Kingdom who actually initiated Brexit on trying to call the bluff of the people, and then he screwed up massively, and then, like a coward, placed his tail between his legs and ran away. The whole Brexit and all that kind of business was an absolute shambles. The country is, in the state that it is now because it's now out of the European Union. I'm not getting into that discussion here. But the thing is that David Cameron has proved that he can't do what he's supposed to do, and that's be a politician. He's proven that time and time again. He's a filthy individual. He's an absolute moron. And yet he's now trying to say, well, we're going to force Benjamin Netanyahu to accept that there is a two-state solution now. When, as I said, the Israelis have always been pleased for a two-state solution. It is the terrorists who are not pleased. Last but not least is the weakness of America. That's Joe Biden, the near corpse. Every time I see Joe Biden on the news, the bloke almost looks like he should be put out to pasture. He's so old and decrepit now that it's just ridiculous. Now, I will let you into a not a big secret, because it's not really, but I never liked Trump. I did find out the things, how strong he was against the Iranians and the Houthis and Hamas, Hezbollah and so forth, and also his aid and assistance for Israel. I think that's absolutely brilliant, and I'm hoping now that Trump will actually get voted back in, because there is absolutely no way that country, the USA, needs another term of this decrepit old moron, Joe Biden. He's an absolute idiot. He is weakness personified. And the worst thing is, why is he so weak at the moment? It's because, just do a quick search on Google yet again. I can Google everything these days. But do a quick search on Google, on Wikipedia, attacks on US bases in Iraq, Jordan and Syria from 2023 to present, starting on the 17th of October, of course that's 10 days after the massacre, or the terrorist massacre on Israel. And in response to the United States' support for Israel in the Israel-Hamas war, Iran-backed militias initiated a coordinated series of more than 170 attacks on US military bases and assets in Syria, Iraq and Jordan. These attacks resulted in injuries to dozens of US service members, and very recently in the last week, I believe, again, the date of this recording is 2nd of February 2024, 3 soldiers have been killed, or they've been murdered or killed, basically. And although the Americans, Biden will then allow some kind of retaliation, then they pull back, and then, okay, right, don't do it anymore and what else have you. Basically, all that Biden is doing is he's worrying about one thing, and that's his next term in office, because it is an election year. He wants to be seen as being really nice. There's a very large Muslim electorate in the Michigan area that he wishes to appease. He wishes to appease all the great unwashed left movement and so on and so forth. He wants to try and help himself back into the White House at the cost of his own people, his own army, which is quite disgusting. The weakness being shown by this individual is absolutely astonishing. Benjamin Netanyahu actually stated something which is very true, that in an interview with Douglas Murray, who is a very good journalist and writer, author and whatever in the UK, basically he said that the only way that these terrorists will actually know is only through strength. You have to be strong. And that is just so true. That is so true. Basically, you've got you've got Biden appeasing the Iranians. You've got Biden basically, dragging his heels massively over the Houthi problem. Now, the Houthis have been attacking and affecting around about, numbers I've been hearing, 10 to 20% of the world trade, because they've been attacking shipping that goes anywhere near the Houthi area. And basically, it is disgusting that now they've, oh, okay, well, you know, in the last, you know, month or so, oh, okay, we'll now get involved. We'll now do this. We'll now do that. It is wrong. It is wrong. Biden has, you know, has shown abject weakness to the Middle East situation. And now he's again to try and appease certain individuals or groups of individuals within his country. He is now basically making statements about imposing sanctions on violent settlers in the West Bank or Judea and Samaria. Take a look at this video.
I continue to be alarmed about extremist settlers attacking Palestinians in the West Bank.
Hello, Mr. President. We in Israel hear that you're alarmed by the extremist settlers attacking innocent Palestinians, leading to your decision to temporarily hold back the shipment of rifles to our country. And we would like to ask you one single question. Could you kindly provide a name, one name, of an innocent Palestinian Arab who lost their life in a premeditated attack carried out by a Jewish settler? I'm not referring to Palestinians killed while attempting to harm Jews, but rather a case where a settler deliberately left his home with the intention of killing a Palestinian. One name. From the beginning of this year. How about in the year 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017? Not even one incident, sir. Now let's look at the Jews that were intentionally slaughtered by those you worry about so much from the beginning of this year alone. February 26, 2 Jewish brothers on their way back home were fatally shot point blank in the murderous town of Hawara. Sweets were handed out the next day in the Palestinian streets. April 7th, a mother and 2 of her daughters were shot to death while driving to a vacation. Not one condemnation coming out from the innocent Palestinian society. May 30th, a father of 2 was shot to death in his car. July 20th, 4 Jews were murdered in a gasoline station near the ancient Jewish village of Eli. The terrorist family were subsequently added to the Palestinian authorities' payroll. August 19th, a father and his son were shot to death in the murderous town of Hawara, turning the perpetrators into heroes within their community. August 21st, a mother of 3 was murdered in front of one of her daughters, and celebrations followed in the innocent Palestinian society. According to the official Israeli government site, in January 2023, there were 187 attacks against Jews in Judea and Samaria alone. 157 terror attacks in February, 183 in March, April, 147 terror attacks against real innocent civilians. Add to these figures dozens more casualties within the Green Line up to October 7th and hundreds more beyond, and it's impossible not to see a clear picture. Mr. President, if given the opportunity, the Arabs surrounding the Jewish settlements would slaughter our children, rape our wives, exactly like they did to us in the Gaza border, and we don't need another October 7th to prove it. With all due respect, Mr. President, but your characterization of the righteous Jews of Judea and Samaria as violent and notorious people is nothing less than another blood libel against the Jewish people, and is a very big moral stain.
So as you can see, there's a lot of information there, and I think that's a very good challenge that person actually stated to Biden. You know, Biden is so quick to send Blinken over, and Blinken has been pressuring the living daylights out of Israel. Yes, you can fight Hamas, but you must do it without killing anybody. That's what they're practically saying. You're supposed to tickle Hamas with a feather duster to get them to give in. That's what they're dealing with. The poor Israelis are back against the wall because they've got world condemnation. They've got everybody ready to jump on them when anything happens, even if it's not their fault and nothing to do with them. And then they've got their biggest ally being the Americans, basically, you know, which I would say is very much a double-edged sword kind of friendship, because I wouldn't put it past Biden to drop Israel like a hot ton of crap than to keep on helping them if it helps him. So basically, yes, the irony of that situation is the fact that I suppose the irony is on me, really. I never liked Trump, but I'm actually wanting him to be voted in because he seems pretty good. He does actually say what he's saying. He sometimes says a little bit too much, I suppose. but he does what he says, and he's not weak like Biden. Now, as we just before we get on to the Great Unwashed, which will form a large part of this. I do apologise once again. My videos much like going to blow out in time. I'm so sorry, but as I said, this thing is so difficult. Now I've got a series of like pictures. I'll put them up here, and I've got like videos. And sorry, I'm just going to be checking to see what I've got because there's a lot of information here. But there are some really good videos, and we'll take a look at quite a few of these videos, and we'll see what people have to say about the situation. Now, if you take a look at the Great Unwashed left movement, it's not a movement, they're basically moving backwards, like a moonwalk, I suppose, like a Michael Jackson moonwalk. There's something I've seen on social media at the moment. It says, no Jews, no news, which I think is absolutely so true. No Jews, no news. It doesn't make news. Now, the Great Unwashed, there are a bunch of idiots led like by apocryphal morons like Greta Thunberg, who's an absolute filthy individual and a liar to boot. And here we have around the world, and as I said, I've come into quite a bit of stick recently by lefty morons. Basically, oh, genocide this and genocide that, and Israel are creating an absolute whatever, and there's an apartheid and what have you. Let's make a few things completely and utterly certain. There is no apartheid from Israel concerning Judea, Samaria and Gaza. Now, in Gaza, that's the worst affected area of the apartheid. And that's an imposed apartheid by Hamas. When they were voted in 16 years ago, the Israelis moved out. You cannot get an Israeli back into Gaza. Full stop. They will not have it. In Judea and Samaria, Israelis, as we've already seen from the video as a response to Biden and his rhetoric about violent settlers and all that rubbish, the issue is that Israelis are being murdered within Judea and Samaria. Wars are being graffitied within Judea and Samaria about Saturday people first, Sunday people next. It just shows. Now, this is an Arab chap who basically says really good points. Take a look at this video.
قالوا أبشر ووقع الخطاب دولة الفلسطين وعلم الملك فهد عرفات انه حصلنا دولة فلسطينية. هرب عرفات ما شافوه الا بعد 10 سنين من هالكلام هذا. هرب ما يبي دولة فلسطينية. كلكم ما تبون دولة فلسطينية لأن أساسا ما لكم قضية ولا لكم دولة ولا لكم أرض. هذه أرض إسرائيل بالقرآن، وأنتم شتات رومان ملفقين مغول وتركمان وشركس وأرمن وغجر. ما لكم حق بفلسطين. فلسطين هذه دولة إسرائيلية لبني إسرائيل، وبني إسرائيل لمعلوميتكم بني إسرائيل هذولا عيال إسحاق، وحنا يا العرب عيال إسماعيل، وإسحاق وإسماعيل أخوين أبوهم إبراهيم عليه السلام، يعني هذولا عيال عمنا. لكن أنتم منين جيتوا؟ أنتم وش دخلكم بالموضوع؟ أنتم يا الشتات يا الغجر يا المغول يا التركمان يا الشركس يا الرومان يا بقايا الشعوب. إيش دخلكم بالموضوع؟ إيش دخلكم بالسالفة؟ إيش دخلكم بيننا؟ هذا بني إسرائيل على أرضهم، ما لكم أرض أنتم ولا لكم قضية يا جماعة. أنتم ما دوختونا واشغلتونا. والأقصى الأقصى لمعلوميتك ما عندكم أقصى، ما في شيء اسمه أقصى، في شيء اسمه القدس. المسجد الأقصى اللي ورد ذكره هو بالجعرانة 29 كيلو على الطائف، وكان المسجدين المسجد الأقصى والمسجد الأدنى. المسجد الأقصى حقكم بناه هشام عام 72 هجري. كيف يسرى محمد له وهو مبني عام 72 للهجرة؟ يعني بعد وفاة محمد ب60 سنة. تضحكون على مين أنتم؟ تضحكون على مين؟ الفلسطيني أنت ما أنت عربي ولا لك أرض ولا لك قضية. الأرض أرض إسرائيل والقضية قضية إسرائيل معكم. كان إسحاق شامير ورابين وشارون وجولدا مائير والثاني والله ما ادري شو اسمه، هذول كانوا ابطال، تدري ولا لا؟ لكن نتنياهو جبان، لان نتنياهو ما حرككم، ما ادري وش يبي بهالاسلحه مكدسها عنده. يا ادمي يا نتنياهو احرق هالعصابات هذه وهالشتات وهالملفقين وريح نفسك وريح العالم منهم وريحنا احنا منهم. ليش مخليهم؟ ليش فتح لهم الحدود يهاجرون؟ إن راحوا للأردن سووا ويلول الأسود، وإن راحوا للكويت انهبوه يوم صدام احتله، انهبوا يلبسون لبس الجيش العراقي وينهبوه. الخسة والنذالة والحقارة ما يتركونها، هذه تربيتهم وهذا دمهم وهذا عرقهم. ليش ما تريح العالم منهم يا نتنياهو إذا أنت رجال وبطل؟ ها؟ الله يلعنكم ويلعن حتى نتنياهو اللي ما خلصنا منكم، لأن نتنياهو تارك لكم الحبل على الغارب، والمفروض نتنياهو هو اللي يأدبكم وهو اللي يخلص العالم من شروركم. أنتم شر في أي دولة تحطون فيها يا الفلسطينيين، شر منزل ولا بكم رجل. أنا مستعد أنام عند يهودي ولا أنام عند فلسطيني، أنا مستعد أقلط يهودي في بيتي وأغديه وأوكله وأشربه ورقده، ولا أدخل فلسطيني في بيتي.
And so basically what he's said, which is true, you know, as we will soon see in the next video, basically asking if the Gazans are, you know, innocent, which as you can see they really are not. The Gazans are, you know, the Hamas terrorists and all this kind of situation is the way it is because of Hamas and what's happening. The indoctrination of young children constantly about killing Jews. It's there. It's on video, it's on TV, it's on social media. They don't care. That's what the Gazan people are like. That's what Hamas are like. And within the sort of the great the unwashed movement, there you do have this absolute insanity, certainly in the UK, about proportionality. The response from Israel must be proportional. Now, Douglas Murray, as I said, as I've mentioned before, he's a fantastic author and journalist and what have you. Basically, Douglas Murray just sums up beautifully. Look at this video about proportionality.
Gaza, cutting off all supplies of fuel, the electricity plant, that's gone. There is no electricity, there is no running water, there is no food going in, there are no other fuel supplies going in. Borders closed with Egypt as well. There's only little criticism of Egypt for that, interestingly. Is that, and while raining down missiles on buildings which they know are going to kill civilians, we know hundreds and hundreds of civilians have already died, many of them children, is that a reasonable, proportionate and moral response by Israel?
There is some deep perversion in Britain whenever Israel is involved in a conflict, and it is the word you just used, proportion, proportionate, proportionality. Only Britain is really obsessed with this. I've heard it for the last few days incessantly. Proportionality in conflict rarely exists, but if we were to decide that we should have this fetish about proportionality, then that would mean that in retaliation for what Hamas did in Israel on Saturday, Israel should try to locate a music festival in Gaza, for instance, and good luck with that, should try to find a music festival in Gaza and rape precisely the number of women that Hamas raped on Saturday, kill precisely the number of young people that Hamas killed on Saturday. They should find a town of exactly the same size as a town like Sderot, where I've been many times myself, and make sure they go to door and kill precisely the correct number of babies that Hamas killed in Sderot on Saturday, and shoot in the head precisely the same number of old age pensioners as were shot in Sderot on Saturday, just to choose one town. Proportionality in conflict is a joke. And it's a very strange British concept which we've had, that only the Israelis in a conflict, when they are attacked, are expected to have precisely the proportionate response.
Then take a look at this. I mean, again, Douglas Murray again, and he just summarises the whole situation regarding Gaza and everything so beautifully well. Watch this.
Israel is the only country in the world never allowed to win a war. That's why, by the way, you have the situation in the Gaza. You have all the international idiots telling the Israelis they have to withdraw. And then what happens? You give the Palestinians a statelet and they give you Hamas and war. Anyone who thinks the West Bank is going to be a Palestinian state is now living with the fairies. And it's not because of the Israelis. It's because the Palestinian Authority hasn't wished to create a state for decades. It never did. It's only ever been interested in creating a state from the river to the sea, as they always say. It's never been interested in a two-state solution. Palestinian Authority under 2 leaders now has repeatedly turned down every Israeli offer of peace. They were offered 99% of what they wanted just 15 years ago. They turned it down again, as Yasser Arafat did at Oslo. They don't want a 2-state solution. They want a 1-state solution, and that's a Jewish-cleared Palestinian state.
Now, take a look at this video. This is actual CCTV footage from, it's, I believe, if I remember rightly, it is close to, almost like a border crossing for between Gaza and Israel. Take a look at this. As you can see, that's just a woman. That's a bog-standard woman. Yeah, she took a kick to the head, but she tried murdering a soldier, an Israeli soldier, with a knife. There we go. Huh. Isn't that surprising? Take a look at the summing up of the situation at the time from Amjad Taha. When hospitals unintentionally became targets, the world erupted in uproar, demanding justice and answers, pointing fingers at Israel rather than at Gaza's terrorists. The voices were loud, the condemnation swift. Now, however, we are met with a deafening silence. The discovery of a tunnel beneath the Al-Shifa Gaza's main hospital endangers countless lives. Yet the voices of outrage are nowhere to be heard. The media, the human rights organisations, the global community, all previously so vocal, now stand silent. The truth is unmistakably clear. The concern is selective, the outrage is conditional. When Hamas puts lives at risk, the world's silence speaks louder than any words ever could. Now that was at the time for when there was a rocket which hit a hospital car park in Gaza, which actually was fired from Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Then they tried to blame it on the Israelis, and then tried to say that at least 2,000 people were murdered by that one rocket. And then it was proved that from phone tappings and also video footage of the rocket being fired off from the area in Gaza, failing and then hitting exactly where the hospital was, it was something else. Basically, Israel kept on saying, nothing to do with us, here are all our logs, this is our proof, this is the proof. And it was only until sort of, if I remember rightly, I think it was the US intelligence agencies, they then said, actually, yes, it was Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So many people were jumping up and down. The left-wing Unwashed movement were going crazy. How dare they kill these people? How dare they? Because I believe it, hook, line and sinker, anything that they tell me from Gaza. Except for anything that Israel tries to tell me. It was absolutely shocking. You know, and then what did the Israelis do? Oh, well, yeah, apart from the fact that they had to fight terrorists inside the hospital, apart from the fact that hospital workers are members of the terrorist organisation, active members in some cases, what did the Israelis do? Oh yeah, they brought baby incubators in. And it's just so funny, you don't see any great unwashed movement demanding justice now, do you? You don't see anything there. As Amjad Taha said, the world remains silent whenever Hamas puts people's lives at risk.